Just pull my shorts down. I'm not completely. Let me hold him.
I did a bit of a...
You're sticking up. Your glasses are sticking up.
What you've done to me?
I thought you said you were gay.
It's all a ruse. Anyway, I'm steaming up again.
Oh, sorry. We're usually much more professional.
We're not.
We're not. That's why we do them in different bookshops every single time. So
We're not allowed back in them. We're slowly but surely getting banned from every bookshop in London.
It's just not right.
Hi and welcome to the Frank Book Club. I'm Simon Savidge.
And I'm Melanie Sykes.
And today we are going to be talking about The Lying Life of Adults by Elena Ferrante. We are here in London Review Bookshop, which is one of my favourite bookshops in London.
It is absolutely gorgeous. I haven't been here before and it's really wonderful and it smells heavenly.
I love it because if you love books, you'll come here and you will always find a book you won't have seen in another bookshop.
Oh really?
Yeah, there'll be certain imprints that you can't get elsewhere. I love it.
Okay.
Genuinely love it. So I was very excited. And they do a mean cake.
Yes.
Which is very important to me.
Yeah, well I've sampled it this morning. You haven't yet, have you? No, I've already tucked
in. Treating myself later. Right, so this month's book club, The Lying Life of Adults, I'm going to start with the question I always start with.
Oh gosh.
Did you like it, Melanie? Or should we say what it's about?
Yeah, do that. Do that
Let's
bit.
do that. I'll do that bit.
Please.
This is going to be like a lethal weapon.
So this is my London Review Bookshop fan that I've just been kindly given, and I'm going to need it with my hot flushes at the moment.
AKA a Simon prodding tool.
Yes, get on with it.
So the book is set in 1990s Neapolitan. What's that? Naples.
Napoli. Yeah.
And it tells of Giovanna, who is... She's just heard her father basically describe her as ugly, although we very soon realise that's not the truth at all. What he did is compare her to her aunt, who is kind of like this unknown entity in the family who's kind of been disgraced. And Giovanna says she wants to find Vittoria and learn about this woman and why she's been ostracised and what really happened with her and her father. And then from then, everything starts. In
order to understand herself in a way, because she's been compared to.
Yes.
So she's trying to unearth, well, who is this person?
And why have I been compared to her? And what's gone on? And what does this mean for my future? And then as she does, things start to unravel.
And she's very young at the start of it as well.
I think she's 13.
Yeah, I think she's 13. I want to say 13 as well. Yeah. So it's a coming of age book, really. It's one of those, isn't it?
Yes, because it lasts over sort of 3 years of her life.
Yeah, which at that point is so significant to anybody, isn't it?
It is.
Your teenage years.
So, how did you get on with it?
Yeah. I think I messaged you when I first started reading it saying how much I was loving it. And I know this sounds so random because I've been watching a load of Bruce Lee films recently. So for some reason, when I was reading it, kept visualising China and not Italy.
Were you expecting there to be some kung fu
It's
at any
not
moment?
kung fu.
Martial arts?
But you say kung fu's Japanese, isn't it?
I don't know if that region sounds.
Well, sorry, no, I just thought I'd throw that in, but it was funny because I suppose what I'm trying to get to is it didn't really matter where it was based, because actually when I read it, it feels quite a mythical story. It could actually be set anywhere in the world at any time. I don't know, I found it really...
It's almost out of kilter with the rest of the world in a way. It feels quite timeless, and it is a timeless story. And I like there are riffs from some classical myths within it. There are sort of elements of almost fairy tale. That's what I mean. That's exactly what I mean. It's got a sinister gothic nature to it. Because I loved the first half.
Yeah.
And then I fell out of love with it a little bit. I still liked it, but I fell out with it. And I think that's because for me, the star of the book was Vittoria, and I wanted her story, and she gets slightly sidelined as it goes on because of, is it Giovanna? Yeah, it's Giovanna.
I'm glad you're up to speed with names. You know what I'm like with names and titles of books.
That said, the other reason I think I got a bit off track with it is the fact that I felt like there was a huge cast, yet there wasn't.
Right.
Does that make sense? Like they've got lots of names, and you've got lots of all these different people in different parts of the family that you didn't know about, but then it's sort of... I felt like it was the first in a series, which I don't know if it is going to be because she has previously done the Neapolitan Quartet, which is a huge but I got the feeling like it didn't feel quite.
Well, it felt like a few different books actually. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I was the same with you. I think I loved it until about 3/4 of the way through, possibly halfway through, and then was just, oh my god, we lost Victoria, and then it was a completely different energy. And then I kept thinking to myself, well, just stick with it because, well, you've got to, because you've got to film and talk about it. So that was a big motivation. But secondly, give it a chance because it might redeem itself at the end. And it, you know, it didn't quite do that, but it was a good resolve.
I thought the ending was really well done, but I think that really needed to be longer. I feel like the sort of almost middle section-ish, well, middle onwards until the very end, felt padding to me. I felt like I wasn't getting, and it gets very repetitive. I felt that kind of the whole way through, and I don't know if that's because there's certain, I mean, we've been laughing about compunction, but now I know what the word means. I kind of understand what it is, because the whole book is looking at good and bad and what they are and where they intertwine, and how, as you, because I feel like part of it is a love story to the sulk.
To the what?
Sulking. You know, when you're a teenager and you're really sulky.
Oh yeah.
I think this describes that feeling when you're kind of at odds with the world. You're a bit kilty. You want to flick it the V's. You're not sure where you are. Yeah,
but you know what it made me think about? Because obviously it's about when you realise your parents are human beings and have and make mistakes and do it in such a spectacular fashion, and they aren't the answer to all your questions. In fact, they just had more questions. And that I thought was an interesting concept. I can't remember when I realised my parents were human beings as opposed to my mum and dad. I can't remember that moment because it wasn't obviously as significant as her findings.
Yeah.
So she finds out that her father has had a long-term affair with her mother's best friend, and it's all a bit of a, well, not incestuous, but there's a lot going on there, and the lies that have been told, and then the realisation of actually these people are just people, and then you feel slightly, I would imagine, kind of a bit unhinged, like, well, who's going to take care of me?
And at the same time, if I'm being compared to someone who's a real black sheep of the family, what does that say about me? Yeah, and I think that is probably one of the biggest things, because about how we do discover, both as we're becoming adults, that our parents are adults and human adults.
Yeah.
It sounds like we think they're androids up to that
no,
point.
No, you do though.
You put your parents on a pedestal.
Well, I don't even notice that. It's just the extension of you, and they're there for you. I mean, why else would you be around if they hadn't created you? So everything they say and everything you do is what you're supposed to do up until a point. And then you realise they're actually making mistakes left, right and centre. And if you overhear your parents talk of you in a way that isn't particularly nice, I mean, I don't know if that's happened to you, but it's not cool to hear things that are said about you, and she unravels big time from this, doesn't she?
She does, and I think, but what I also like is that she unravels, but she also rebels against it. So that she's got, I did like the fact that she had some right oomph about her, and I did enjoy that, and also I do like the fact that she starts to look at like things morally, and she starts to look at how she can rebel, and a lot of that is around sexuality and sex because of her aunt Victoria, who I loved her, but sometimes I found her a bit full on, like when she's suddenly talking to a 13-year-old about how you should fuck someone.
Yeah.
Or then there's a point where she starts touching her as she's older, and I was like, that's... Ugh. The book did make me feel queasy quite a few times.
Yeah, there was a few moments like that, but also her girlfriends as well. That didn't make me feel queasy, but she had some experiences that were quite sexual with her girlfriends at the beginning, you know, but which was just a demonstration of love and exploration, which is great, but there was a lot of that sort of vibe throughout the whole thing, really, wasn't there?
Well, I was hoping that there would be a kind of the ending, without giving too much away, has a possibly quite sapphic take. That's what I think might emerge, and I wonder if there is going to be another one.
I wonder.
Because it could be, because you're left almost on a cliffhanger of, well, there's going to be a next adventure of them if they become adults. I don't want to give too much away.
No, I think you might have done already, sorry, but I think you just did.
Oops. But that said, when people have watched, and we've sometimes done sports, it's made people want to go and read it.
Yeah,
it's really interesting how that happens.
Yeah.
But actually, and one thing I suppose that I did feel the book was very much about was the burden of virginity. That's a real...
How long did you have that burden for?
We've discussed this before.
Yeah, no, I'm really joking. You don't need to divulge.
But quite young. So that burden got shipped off. But I don't.
So it wasn't really a burden for you at all, was it? Really?
I didn't have time to think about whether it was a burden or not. It was gone. Anyway, moving on.
Oh my god, it is. Yeah, okay. It's funny that you use the word burden.
Well, it's almost because her and her best friend just want to get it done.
Yeah, well, that's what ends up.
Yeah, you can say
yeah,
that.
but it ends up happening, doesn't it? Because she doesn't even want the intimacy of it or the.
It's like a tick box.
It is literally tick my box. She's like, don't touch me. Just do it.
Make sure you've washed your hands.
Yeah.
She's very insistent on that.
She's like,
but we're getting ahead of ourselves
Yeah,
because
we
that
are.
is towards the end.
No, it is the end.
But rewind.
Yeah, let's rewind.
The big theme in the book, I think, is ugly versus beauty, or ugliness versus beauty. I need to get the words right. And I like the fact that she looks at that, and there's the way she describes Victoria when she first meets her, I thought was fascinating. She was so beautiful, the only way it could be defined was that it was ugliness, because people didn't know how to handle her beauty. So therefore, because it was different, they would say by default she was ugly. I thought it was really interesting.
Okay, I didn't actually notice that.
Yeah, there's
And
a
I
scene where
don't
she first meets
understand
her.
it. Please explain. I don't
So it's
get
that
it.
thing where people, if someone's like, it's almost like people are made uncomfortable by how, maybe it's not, maybe it's that, what's it that I always say that Madonna's got? She's got that, this is where I'm going to not be able to find the word.
It doesn't matter.
But it's where someone is unusually beautiful or defies what you would say is stereotypically beautiful, but they are beautiful and people can't quite work out how to react to that.
Oh, right, okay.
I guess it's like Smart. Smart is so... But I just remember that when she opens the door, she's not ugly.
Right,
She
yeah.
sees her as just being so beautiful, she can't quantify what that beauty is, so she's like, people would label that as ugly.
Okay, let's talk about the beauty element then, because obviously all the way through it, she talks about how her body is, men find her body really beautiful, but her face not so beautiful, and there's that. But then she is beautiful, so I didn't really understand that trajectory throughout
found
the book.
it.
Go on.
She's invited in, and she says that she's not allowed to call her aunt again. I nodded yes, I was frightened. I looked for a few seconds at her face without makeup, then stared at the floor. Victoria seemed to me to have a beauty so unbearable that to consider her ugly became a necessity.
Oh, okay, right.
And I was just like, it's that thing where...
You couldn't take it in?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think that's...
That's quite a compliment, isn't it?
You're so gorgeous, you're a minging. I've heard that before. At least I think that's what I heard them say. Anyway, but I think the whole way through, beauty is something that looks like what is beautiful, what is not. And I think she makes the grotesque quite beautiful in this book. It makes you feel queasy, but there's a beauty to it, and I did like that about her writing.
Yeah. I'll tell you what in the midst of me losing, not interest in the book, but just it becoming more of a chore to read, shall we say, is when she meets Roberto.
Yes.
At the church. It's in church.
Yes, because he sort of introduces a religious aspect a little bit.
Yeah.
And he's kind of a hot
And
priest.
he's a hot priest. So that piqued my interest, obviously. And
I won't lie, it did for me.
Oh my god, and it's the way it was almost like, what's the word? She's in church, she sees him, it's the end of a chapter, and it is just a big bomb drops, like, who is this man and what he does to her physically was brilliant. And I just thought, great, we're back on track again. And we were better off after that moment.
We were, but I felt because the theme then becomes almost history repeating itself of what her aunt did in terms of, we find out one of the reasons that her aunt's been disgraced is because she broke up a marriage, or she had an affair with a married man who had children, and that's why she was kind of ostracised, even though the irony of that is that she was mostly ostracised by Giovanna's father, who was a cheater.
Yes.
And that, I thought the way she looked at that was brilliant, and the hypocrisy. But then I felt a bit like, I get what you're trying to do. You're giving us a mirror image, and but it felt a bit. I think as well, I felt like the first half was really original. It was falling on like old tropes that I've seen in literature before, but it was a big secret, and you were in good. Whereas in the second half, I just felt it became a bit more, I've read this before, I know what's going to happen here. I feel like I'm on a path that's well trodden.
Okay.
That's how I felt.
So did you know that the outcome would be the outcome?
I had a feeling it was going to go that way.
I didn't. I just expected it to absolutely get on that. I was hoping she did.
Well, she sort of tries, doesn't she?
I don't think she. No, I think she realised. No, well, but my understanding was she just didn't. She could have done and she chose not to.
Because they end up in bed together, don't they?
No, she sleeps on the sofa. She sleeps on the sofa. He invites
that's
her,
it.
and
Sorry.
she doesn't go. So unless I missed a huge bit that I was
I've
hoping
gone
for.
the wrong way. That sounds wrong. I have gone the wrong way several times in my life. That's not for this.
Oh no, let's talk about those
Let's
moments.
not about this. That's for after.
But it is interesting, isn't it? It's just like we're talking about, ugly versus beauty and good versus bad, and the thing is, there's no such signs.
There isn't. There's the
in real terms.
No,
there isn't, because people having affairs, it takes two to tango. There's reasons why people do it. I'm not justifying why you should do it, but it isn't good and bad. It's not evil and angelic.
Nothing
is
black and white.
Nothing at all ever is. And if the people in that scenario are okay with it, like her mother, for example, knew it was going on, was handling it, it's nobody's business.
No, but I think if you find out that's about your own family and the morals you've been brought up on, and it defies the hypocrisy, and that can be shattering, especially at that age. It's a very informative age. But also, I agree that for most of us, we know it's not black and white, we know it's not good and bad, we know it's not ugly and beautiful, but society creates morals that bring in those boundaries. And I do think that Elena Ferrante does look at the grey area. I think she actually embraces it and really goes for the grittiness in it. And I love some of her writing when she writes about just the kind of like everyday aspects of life are beautiful. And I thought, interestingly, there was a little bit around, which she's done before, because I read, and I was quite nervous about reading this, because I read one of her books before, My Brilliant Friend, which is kind of, her series went on to just sell so many. It was like everybody was reading them. I remember I think I was in London at the time. Everyone was reading them on the tube. You just saw loads of them.
Oh, really?
And they've now become a TV show. And this has actually been optioned by Netflix to be a series, which is quite interesting.
A series?
Yeah, which is why I think there might be more to come.
Right.
But or maybe not. Maybe it was like Game of Thrones, where they're writing it before the author's catching up.
Right. Yeah.
You never know. But I struggled with that book. And at first, I'd started to read this earlier this year, and I struggled again. And I was really relieved when I got into it, because I really loved it this time, until that book. And there's nothing worse than a great, choose what I ever say this.
Go on.
A great start off that just gets a bit limp and disappointing.
Well, yeah.
Which does link in with the book.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's a little bit how I felt with this, which is a shame.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question? Because I don't know if I've read many books that have been, because it was written in Italian, wasn't it? And then it gets
and translated. We had a question about that.
Have we? What's the question?
One of our viewers wanted to know.
That might be the same question I'm about to ask.
Do you lose anything in translation?
Yeah, that's the thing, and we'll never know unless you speak Italian and can read Italian. You won't actually know, but I suspect you must do, because the poetry of another language can't always translate into a different language, can it?
I think you have to work, and I think she does work with the same translator.
I was going to say.
Did you know that what I think is so ironic about this book? I will come back to what you just said, but I just remembered this. Nobody knows who Elena Ferrante is. Right. It's a pseudonym.
Oh, is it?
So it's kind of like even her author picture is not a real person, it's a painting. And I love the fact that the whole book is about lies and the myths we create around ourselves, and that the author has done that. I'll come back to that.
I wonder why, and she's done that across all her books.
Yeah, Elena Ferrante, no.
She just doesn't want to be famous. She just wants to.
Famous at that point where everyone was reading on YouTube, people were trying to hunt this author down and kind of solve the mystery, and I think they almost did. But anyway, but going back to translation,
so she's like the Banksy of the mystery.
She is a little bit, yeah. I think in terms of translation, it is like you said, you can't know, because unless I went away, I don't know Italian. I'd like to, but I don't know it. Unless I could read it in the original language, I wouldn't be able to tell you.
You wouldn't know. No.
I don't know if you lose something. I think I think it's probably just a different version. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not like demo versus finale, like with music, but it must just be. But I think they must get the spirit of it. I hope.
Yeah.
But do you know the author Elena Ferrante?
No.
She is from Turkey. She writes her books in English, sends it to be translated in Turkish, then translates the Turkish into the Turkish that she knows, because the Turkish language has got more modern since she used to.
Oh, wow.
So she puts all the old past. We should read her at some point.
Okay.
Very, very
okay, well, let's get her
anyway,
on the list.
That was just a little bit.
Yeah,
but I
let's
do
get
find
on
the
the list.
translating thing quite fascinating, like the relationship between translator and author, because you must have to work quite closely.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel like it was a translated book when I was reading it.
No, well, I don't think you would.
It didn't. I think. Yeah. I wonder if you can tell if ever it feels clunky. And this didn't feel clunky. Maybe the final third in Italian isn't quite so. I don't want to use this stodgy.
Did you think it was stodgy?
I felt it was a bit stodgy and a bit repetitive.
It was definitely repetitive.
It was the compunction thing. All I kept hearing was compunction, compunction, compunction.
Well, what was that final word? That
you had a
let
word.
me just write the word at the end. There's a scene with the main character. Please, what's her name again? Giovanna. And she is with the guy where she's losing her virginity.
The burden.
The burden. Excrescence?
Excrescence?
Let me. Oh no, I was going to do the thing, but I can't.
But what does it mean?
So she was talking about his penis, and this is
what it always comes down to in book club every time.
There was this word, she used this word, and I thought, oh my god, what's that? And it's a distinct outgrowth on a body or plant resulting from disease or abnormality, and that is how she describes the man's penis who she loses her virginity to.
But this is why I think she might be queer. Because she does have those experiences with her friends, and then she's just, it's almost like tick my box and get that done.
And
then this friendship that's going to go off. But that could be me, because I try to make everything a little bit queer. If I can. But
we might have just had a really horrible penis.
Not even commenting on that. I'm saying nothing. Oh, there are some absolute ones.
Oh my god, well, you've been at it longer than me, so I'll have to take your word for that.
But one thing that we haven't done about, which is probably the biggest subject in the book.
Why do we always everything's sex with us? And
this is a very sexy book.
It is, but
not sexy.
No, not sexy in that you're going to get all giddy and turned on by it. But in fact, we need to read an erotica novel of some description, because I don't think I ever have, and I really need to. I mean, as much I used to read a lot of Harold Robbins when I was a teenager. And that was about as racy as it got. And you'd get like 3 or 4 pages in a whole novel, and the corners would turn down, and I would just read and read. Right, so anyway,
well, no, I just want to say the biggest theme in the book, though, which we haven't talked about, is lying.
Oh, yes.
The book is all about the lies we tell.
Yes.
How important are lies? And somebody did ask, one of our viewers said, how important do we think lies can be? And how necessary sometimes?
Well, I don't think they're necessary at all. I mean, I live and die by the truth. We're called the Frank Book Club, and that's about being direct. Anytime you tell a lie, it does not serve you well, even in the smallest way, because it's not about the person that's receiving the lie, it's about the lie that you're saying. So the disease of lying is yours. It doesn't belong to anybody else. It'll bring you down. It's not about the other people, actually. It's about you. So if you want to hurt yourself, lie.
But in terms of this book, where people are lying because as she's growing up, they don't want her to know that yet. That I found quite interesting.
No, but it's like, can I give you an example? It's slightly different, and it's not about sex at all. But for example, when Tino, no, it's not all about sex. But all I'm saying is, for example, my youngest son is autistic, and I found out when he was 2 years old. Now, some people I know who had autistic children at that time didn't tell their children that they were autistic. They thought, we don't want to burden them with it. But I told Tino, even when he didn't even understand the word, because he's grown up knowing that he's wired differently than other children. He's been able to grow up knowing it and understanding it. It's like it's like not telling somebody that they're adopted until they're 15. The devastation that occurs from that lie later on, you think you're doing your child a favour at the beginning, but you're actually not. And so no lie is necessary, in my eyes in my life, and I'm not saying I haven't lied, you learn from your mistakes, right? So for me, they're unnecessary and cause more problems down the line. Well, we know this anyway.
Yeah.
Some people tell little tiny lies all the time.
As a kid, I was a big fibber.
Were you?
Oh yeah, massive. Loved to fib.
You loved them.
Yeah,
That's
I used
really
to love
interesting.
fibbing.
Really?
But I think it was because I felt like I was making up stories.
Okay, right.
So,
okay.
but they were just very short and fibs. But it's when you mention how important it is not to lie, because my mum got pregnant with me when she was 15, and my grandparents were going to bring me up as theirs, and my mum would have been my sister. I mean, it's EastEnders, like in real life.
But the EastEnders.
I'm not your mother, yes I am.
Oh my god, that's just so.
It would have been hilarious, but
It's not
I say
hilarious,
that it
that's
wouldn't.
the thing.
It would have absolutely shattered
Yeah.
probably my world.
Yes.
So I think that is that sort of thing. And I remember when me and Chris were looking at adopting, and we were talking about like when do you tell a child? And they were like, you should be telling them from the beginning. It's just how you tell. It's not about making it a big thing.
Yeah.
And I think this is what's so interesting is there's this kind of, with the father particularly, I was really cross with the dad the whole way through because I just thought he was an arsehole. And it was the fact that it
Well, he
was
wasn't he described as a wet blanket?
sanctimonious.
Actually, the wet blanket is used in this, and that was an English translation. I'd love to know what wet blanket is in Italian. In
We
fact,
need
I've
to
got to
find
find
that
out
out,
that.
yes.
We need to find that out. But wasn't he
In the
described as a wet
edit,
blanket?
we'll find out and I'll put it down there. It's like a little note. This is what we might all need that if we ever go to Italy at
Well,
some
we
point.
might.
But yeah, I thought that the lying thing I thought was interesting because it is how she starts to enjoy lying and how she uses lies in really interesting ways. But I thought that was a really interesting theme in the book.
No, it absolutely is. Yeah.
And one question, a final question from one of our viewers was, do you think, because this book has no social media in it, it's pre-social media, and they were asking, I thought it was a really interesting question, how do you think lying has taken on a different context in social media? Because people generally put out a perception of their life that is
Oh my god, yeah.
so happy and positive when it might not be.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, not all current novels mention social
Oh,
media.
no, but it was just because I think they were looking at how the story could have been different if it had been set now. Sorry, that should have prefaced that.
No, I'm just trying to understand. So this book isn't set now?
No.
Right, I didn't...
I think it was meant to be the 1990s.
Oh, was it? See, I missed that completely. Because I was in mythical land anyway. I wasn't even... It felt like a fable to me anyway, so I wasn't really placing it in any decade or whatever. Social media. Do you know what? I hate to say it, but I find the question quite... it's kind of a little bit done in terms of conversation, in terms... For me, we all know people put a very glossy view of themselves on social media. My take on it is, I put things out that I'm doing that I'm enjoying. I don't my dirty linen on there. So that's my take on what I do. So I'm not always shiny happy.
No,
if I'm not posting, people know that I'm busy.
Or I've got a thing now where I'm starting to tell people when things aren't as great, not giving any spoilers, not giving any
life.
secrets, or you know what I mean, not giving, if it involves...
Well, you don't have to air
I
your
wouldn't,
dirty
yeah,
linen.
exactly, that was it, I'm not airing my dirty linen. And actually I've got some amongst the hotel I stayed at, I fell asleep with a chocolate bar last night. Just imagine the scenes, Melanie, this morning, what they're going to find. Anyway, I'm having a right day. I thought somebody that wasn't Melanie was Melanie earlier, and I did a peekaboo through the window. Not Melanie. But going back to what I was
Do you
saying.
know what can I just say? If somebody peekabooed me through a window and got me mixed up, I would find it so funny, and I'd be just like, ah! I wouldn't be like, who's that weirdo? I'd go along with it. What does that say about me?
I thought I was the weirdo. I think they probably quite enjoyed it.
Well, there you go.
I didn't get a restraining order on me anyway.
Well,
anyway,
so,
but
yeah.
I think it's interesting. Like I will now. I tried to share. There was an anniversary of a really dark time in my life that I did share on socials because I was like, this I can because it's in the past, but also I think it's important to know not everything is glossy, not everything is perfect.
But we know that anyway. We don't need people on social media telling us either it's all beautiful or it's all not so beautiful and beautiful at the same time, because that's just like, it's bizarre that we discuss social media as some kind of barometer and on society. It's bullshit. We need it for business. It's a really brilliant business tool, and that's really as far as it goes.
I think
if you
now,
take it more serious than that, then you
yes.
really need to really take stock of yourself. Because I don't buy into anything. I'm doing it because I want people to read. I want people to go and see the James Bond movie. I want people to go and experience some art that I've seen, and that's why I use it. It's just to share what I think is good. But, you know, if I'm having a bad day with, I don't know, with something to do with home, and maybe the kids have got an issue that we're trying to... It's nobody's bloody business.
No.
You know, my children aren't even on social media. They couldn't give a crap about it. And they're this generation. And they're not interested. So it's not all everybody makes it, because not everybody is on it.
No. And actually, it was really interesting. We were talking about it in the last book club, weren't we? About how, like, people are often on their phones sharing the experience, not experiencing the experience.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've gone off on an absolute detour, but thank you
We
for that
always
question.
do, I think.
So, that was our thoughts. Overall, what would you say? Overall, top note. Mine would be, really like the first half, I think Victoria is a brilliant character. Lots of interesting stuff. Really good book club book.
God, I don't know what to say. I don't want to say... I don't want to be too negative about it. I think...
That's Melanie's thought.
I just don't want to be... I don't want to say don't read it, because there's some elements of it that are really fantastic. Do you know what? Can we just not have coming of age stories? Can we have some grown-up stories from now on for a little while?
What's the term for that? Bildungsroman or something? Bildungsroman.
What does that mean?
There is a term that's like coming of age.
Right.
It's one of those fancy posh literary words that I've learned, and now I feel like I need to say every so often. Bildungsroman.
Well, I'm so happy you shared that, but I don't want one of those again for a while.
Okay. That's what you're told.
No, but I should choose some. I kind of let you do the choosing mostly, because you're very...
selection.
Yeah, you send me a selection.
Anyway,
whatever.
So, but what I will say actually is, lots of people who have been reading along with us have absolutely blinking loved it.
Fantastic.
So that's ace. And I enjoyed it overall, and I'm glad I've given Elena Ferrante a second shot. I'm not sure if I'll read any more, but maybe one of the really slim ones I'll try again next. Anyway, what's next, Melanie?
Right, next I have to go into my bag.
Next month
is Leave the World Behind by Rumaan Alam.
And this is already, speaking of Netflix, been bought. It's going to star Julia Roberts and Denzel Washington, and it's about a couple who go to almost like an Airbnb outside of town.
Yeah.
Something weird has happened in the city that they're sort of aware of, but think they're sort of on holiday, so they don't really care. And then suddenly the owners of the house come knocking on the door and say, "We need to stay here." And I think there's some stuff going on.
Has there been a trailer for it, or it hasn't been made?
I don't think so, no,
okay, fine.
But
well, it's got some great reviews on the back, page turner, and
I think as well, for the time of year we're going into,
easily the best thing I've read all year.
Oh,
yeah.
It has been really, really, really raved about. But I thought this would be a good one for the time of year, because it's meant to be a little bit creepy and sinister.
Oh no. It scared me. I don't really like horror.
Well, we're going to give it a whirl. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to go to Frank Magazine for more delightful things from Melanie particularly, and me, a little sprinkling of Savage on the top.
Yeah.
And we will speak to you all soon. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye. We can do this, come on.
We can do this.
As live.
As live. Well, it is live.
It's not.
Are you a hologram? We like ABBA. Is that what happened
I was so
to us?
disappointed when I realised there were going to be a hologram.
I know.
That's just not right.